your host of the Influential Nonprofit, and today we're going to talk about something new I learned about. Now, if you've been with me for a while, you know that I have talk a lot about boundaries and agreements. And in fact, I think it's episode 231. In fact, I know it's episode 231. I do a whole thing on boundaries and agreements. So if you want to go deeper into that, you should check that one out. But I want to expand on this a little bit because the thing about setting a boundary or an agreement is that it's going to be tested. And I've always understood this. And I've used the word initiation, which I never really loved, and also there wasn't a better one. The word initiation, there'll be a trial. They may not believe exactly that something is changing or that you're serious about it. And so what happens is the boundary gets tested or the agreement gets tested and it collapses in on itself because you are not prepared for it to be tested. So I'm going to share with you what that is really happening and how to manage it so that you can actually make the changes that you want. Now, I've had to learn this the hard way. Most of us do learn things the hard way, unfortunately, and that's okay. If you've ever really set a boundary and things didn't get better, in fact, they got worse, that doesn't mean that the boundary or agreement isn't working. So let's say, you decide to put some new procedures in place and people on your team start pushing back. Your board is suddenly, has urgent expectations that you weren't aware of. A donor or somebody or even a friend becomes more demanding and you're thinking, whoa, I'm just trying to set agreements or boundaries, and now I'm thinking I made it worse. And what if making it worse is actually what's going to make it better? And that if it's worse, that means it's going to get better. What happens is most people, when the first effect of an agreement or boundary is worse, you're like, well, obviously this isn't working, and you stop. Let me quickly reframe what an agreement and a boundary is. Boundaries are things we don't want to have happen. I don't want to be interrupted. I don't want to be sending emails at night. I don't do early meetings. That's a boundary for me. I don't do early meetings. So boundaries are things we're saying no to. Boundaries are pretty easy to define because it's simply how our brains work, that we feel it's easier for us to understand what we don't want instead of what we do want. Agreements are things we do want. If I am not sending emails all night, what am I saying yes to? I'm saying yes to time with my family. If I'm not doing early morning meetings, what am I saying yes to? I'm saying yes to having quieter mornings or working more to the natural rhythms of my body. Okay? So boundaries are things we don't want. Agreements are things we do want. Both are valid. Like, I'm not going to, if somebody's attacking me, I'm not going to say, hey, could we make an agreement that you do not attack me? Right? No. A boundary is a hard no, and it's something that we don't want to have happen. What makes agreements a little more powerful is that we're looking towards what we do want to have happen. What is important for us to happen? That's an agreement. And in both of these, though, is the idea that the agreement is being tested and that testing is a predictable part of change. And I learned the word and the concept for this, and I'm so excited to be able to integrate this into the work that I already do. And that concept is called extinction burst. It's a concept, I think it's B.F. Skinner. Again, I don't think I know. It's B.F. Skinner from behavioral psychology, called extinction burst. And it's what happens when something that used to work for somebody stops working. Instead of the behavior going away immediately, it actually gets stronger first. If you've ever raised a toddler, be a teenager, you have seen this in action. A simple example would be the elevator button, right? And it's not coming, so you're pressing it harder. Ding, 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 ding. Now, humans do this in relationships all the time. Extinction bursts happen all the time. And I'm going to give you tons of examples so you can understand it. It means that we are going to try harder before we let go of a behavior. Right? If your kid got something in the store, let me take you back. When my oldest was young, my husband and I were in the grocery store with them, and they said, "Hey, can I have this?" And I said no, and I asked my husband, and my husband said yes, and this opened a door in his logic that it took us months to close again because got away with it once. So now, if both of us are saying no, there was pushback because it worked once or it worked a couple of times. Then we say, hey, we have to be on the same page. There weren't to the level of tantrums, but there was a push. Like, you gave me this before, it worked before, why isn't it working now? And it can be, and the extinction burst is the frustration and anger of the person because what a system that used to work for them is now changing. So let's talk about what's actually happening. Behavior exists because it gets a result, right? Donor pressures, if your donor pressures you, they get access. A staff delays, get rescued. When your staff your team isn't doing what they're supposed to, you're going to go rescue them. A board oversteps boundaries, they get influenced. These things work. I worked with somebody a couple of years ago who was constantly being interrupted to the point that she went to the park to work, and people found her at the park to ask her questions. Okay? Because it got results. And part of the extinction burst and the boundaries and agreements is understanding that it could be working for you as well. If I worked with somebody and she liked to solve the problems, people came to her with the problems, but part of it was admitting that she actually liked to solve problems. She liked being the hero. And so you get to say your part in this as well, that this pattern could be working for you in a way, but when it's no longer working, or you realize, hey, that was never really serving me, I want to make a change. I want a new agreement. I want a new boundary. I'm going to create office hours or create different conditions that will allow me to work more effectively. Then people may push back because it was working for them. So their response is, maybe I just need to try harder. Maybe they didn't really mean it. Maybe this is the exception. Let's say, I used to do Zumba on Tuesday nights, and it was pretty consistent for me. And people would say, that was a big agreement for me. I loved my Tuesday night Zumba. Oh, well, maybe you can make an exception, or maybe they didn't really mean that that's what they do, or, so they're going to question your dedication to the new boundary or agreement. But a systems burst, an extinction burst, is the system's last attempt to get the old results, and it's not going down without a fight. So when it doesn't work in the beginning, doesn't mean it's not working. That means that it is actually part of the process, that they're going to push back a little bit harder. And this is where most boundaries and agreements collapse. And that's why I'm so glad to learn this concept and to learn more about it and share it with you, because this is really where people struggle, because you try it and you said, I tried that, it didn't work. It actually was working if you could have understood that and stuck with it. Here's what it looks like. Now, an extinction burst will look like more intensity, stronger tone, sense of urgency, more frequency, more emails, more follow-ups, more phone calls, more emotion, frustration, anger, pressure, guilt. And also the last one is testing exceptions, right? Just this once. Maybe just this once. You could do it just this once. I think kids are really good at that. I'm just reading these and thinking, oh, right, okay. So, and it can be easy to acquiesce, okay, sure, just this once. I'll enforce it next time, right? Because you don't want to live through the extinction burst. And especially if you are a nonprofit person that maybe, I don't know, this could be you. If it is, I see you because it's me too, a little conflict averse. You could be, you know. And so that extinction burst feels like conflict, feels like a threat against you, and you subconsciously want to shut it down immediately. If you could understand what's happening from an informational perspective, not an emotional perspective, then you can understand that these emotions and feelings are just what we need to go through to get to the other side. Here's why this matters is most people experience this moment and think it's going all wrong. So they drop the boundary. And if you give in during the extinction burst, you don't stop the behavior, you actually train it to keep continuing. You just taught them what they need to do next time to get what they want. So the extinction burst is not the problem. It's actually the moment the old pattern is losing power. And it's the moment that most people give up or quit a boundary or an agreement. If you can hold it through this moment, you actually can change the pattern. And an extinction burst will happen. And I'm hoping, I'm probably sure that you're rethinking certain times when you tried to implement something and it didn't go, and you're thinking, okay, I tried that and it didn't work. Oh, now I get it. I wasn't prepared for the extinction burst. I wasn't prepared for the pushback. I may have caved. All right, now you know. You know, you're setting up deadlines if people are missing deadlines and you're going to be enforcing a deadline. There's going to be pushback. There may be emotion. There may be resentment. And that's okay. That's okay. Because that's part of it. So let's talk about how this shows up in fundraising in nonprofit world. So an example would be a donor access changes. So let's say you have a donor that's all up in the business and has a lot of say over some things that are happening. And you've decided that that's not really working for you and you're going to create a new agreement. And this is an agreement you may create with the donor. That, hey, we're going to look at this a little bit differently. We're requesting some autonomy and they agree, but then they don't really mean that and they're going to come back harder. And now the pressure increases. Staff accountability rises. You want people to be more accountable. Performance will dip first, okay? Because they're not sure you really mean it. And it's same with your board. Accountability with the board, it's going to dip. Board structure, you add it, there's going to be more testing. Do you really mean this? It isn't dysfunction, it's withdrawing from an old agreement. Right? This isn't people being purposely spiteful or not wanting to do something. This is how their brain is processing this change. And so when they're like, hey, this pattern used to work, now it's not working, maybe I better turn up the volume. Maybe they didn't really hear me. When you set a boundary, right, and you set an agreement, right, they are going to be tested. And that's called the extinction burst. So now you have language for this. And if you, like I said, if you've ever raised a toddler or a teenager, when you're trying to change behavior patterns, going to bed, or there will be a fight because this used to work for them. And they can't believe it's not working. And they're going to push. They're going to raise the drama because their brain is trying to work out how they can still make this old pattern work for them. So let's talk more about examples of how this shows up. An old pattern, like I mentioned, would be a donor gives and expects influence, right? So we don't make program decisions based on individual donor requests. That's not what we do. That's something we did in the past. This is something we're going to do. Could we make an agreement? Our decisions follow mission and strategy. So then what happens? There's more pressure. Maybe there's threats to take their funding elsewhere. There's increased calls or outreach, more urgency, right? But the escalation, that's the extinction burst. And what could be happening is inside you is like, well, I don't want them to leave. I don't want them to lose their money. So you maybe, hey, well, for most donors, we don't allow that. But for this person, we do. This is how exceptions are made. And this is how resentment builds. And, you know, one of the things I talk about is releasing the outcome. This is a perfect example of like setting that agreement and then releasing the outcome, letting whatever happen is going to happen, and letting that extinction burst happen, knowing that this is part of the process of letting go. Let's talk about your staff, right? You're like, let's say that you're a person who people will reach out and you're a solver, you're a fixer, you're going to jump in and rescue people. And it's just a pattern that's developed. Well, things are going to get worse before they get better. If you're starting to enforce deadlines, more deadlines will be missed before they're going to start being enforced. Don't let go yet. For your board communication structure, you know, like let's say you're going to create a communication structure for your board, like some sort of Google Doc or a Monday thing. There's going to be more side conversations before people actually acquiesce to the new system. The system reacts with an extinction burst before it recalibrates. Most of us, that makes us uncomfortable. The board members aren't happy. Everybody's grumbling. You're getting a bunch of negative feedback. That's extinction burst. That's extinction burst, okay? In a relationship, if let's say, you're setting a new agreement within a relationship, whether it's a friendship or a partner, or a colleague, you're setting a new agreement, they will push a little bit before they acquiesce. And that's okay, because that's their brain trying to figure out what's really going on. If you're in this moment right now where things feel more intense after setting a boundary, it doesn't mean it's not working. It might mean it's working exactly as it should. And the intensity is often proportional to how effective the boundary is. So if the boundary agreement is an effective one, it is going to get probably more extinction burst than less. So let's say you're a person who in the past was allowed for interruptions during the day. I use this because this is a really common experience. Or let's say you have a time booked on your calendar to do something, and a board member calls and says, hey, can you meet at 4:00? Well, you've got something booked on your calendar, to get a project done or something. Well, I don't really have a meeting or anything scheduled, so I guess I can meet with them. And they're used to being able to call you or walk into your office and sit down, and this is no longer working for you. You feel a slave to, let me exchange that language. I apologize for that. You feel beholden to other people's whims and needs instead of your own. You are not the sovereign one over your day. Other people are dictating what happens during your day. So you say, hey, I'm the queen. I'm the sovereign one, right? I say who comes and goes, and I say when. So, and if people are used to having a lot of access to you, there will be an extinction burst. And they're going to come at you now more frequently to test it. And again, this is not because they're consciously saying, I hate her. I want to. No, they're like, their brain is trying to figure out why this old pattern isn't working. I really don't believe that people do this out of malcontent. They do it because it worked for them, right? It worked for them to have access to you. They didn't have to think about when would be a good time to talk, right? So let's say you're the sovereign one over your calendar and you're saying, I'm happy to help. My help time is, from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. every day, or once my door is open. Come to me then. Like, okay, great. But now they're coming to you at 9 a.m. because they used to, and they're like, oh, that's not for me, or that's not a thing. And hey, I've done this too. All right. I know I've done this. Oh, that's not for me. Blah, blah, blah. I always talk to them. I can do it. I'm the exception. It's like, no, hey, can you bring this back at 1? Like, oh, and they're gonna get their feelings hurt a little bit, and that's part of the process. So being able to let go of the results and feel and allow everybody to feel, for you to feel, because it does suck, for you to feel that, for them to feel the frustration, that's part of the process. All right. So what to do here? This is the simple way to get through this. Okay. What to do? Expect it, right? Expect that this is going to happen. Whenever you raise standards, you invite testing, right? I say it all the time, right? You raise your standards, people rise to meet it or they fall away. And part of the choosing to rise to meet it or fall away is this testing, called the extinction burst. Number 2, don't personalize it. They're reacting to a loss of a reliable pattern that benefited them, not to you. And I think this can really help. That's why I'm sharing this, so that you have language for it, so that you understand this isn't about you. This is something that happens, that we all go through this, and they're reacting to a loss of a pattern that worked for them, not to you. And it can be really easy to personalize this, especially if you're nervous about creating a boundary or an agreement, and it's already making your heart pound a little bit. Okay. Now, number 3 is to hold the boundary and reinforce the agreement. It's calm, consistent repetition. An example: we're excited to partner with you, and decisions will continue to follow our strategy. And you can hear the pushback. Well, you've always done it this way, or I can't believe this would be happening, or think, yes, I understand, and we're excited to partner with you, and decisions will continue to follow our strategy. Number 4, and my favorite: release the outcome. Some relationships will rise, some will fall away. And that's okay. We can't change behavior unless we change the boundaries and agreements that support the behavior. And once we do that, and we can't support the boundaries and agreements without the extinction burst, the testing process. And you may see people unravel, and you're thinking, what have I done? Okay. Oh my God, reset. Let's go back to start. I don't like this. But understand that it's part of the process, okay? I'm going to say it again. We can't change behavior unless we change the boundaries and agreements that support it, the patterns that support the behavior that benefited everyone, right? And you realize that pattern no longer benefits me, or it never really did. I want to change it. I want a new boundary. I want a new agreement. Understanding the extinction burst will happen. If this is hitting for you, if you're recognizing where you set a boundary, or where you need to, and you're either getting pushback or avoiding it altogether, this is exactly the work we do inside the donor flow framework. This is exactly the work we do, because we show up as sovereign leaders. We show up creating possibility and excitement. We show up connecting to people, attracting new people, creating the flow and ease in our life. And that starts with the boundaries and agreements. It's not just about concepts like extinction bursts. It's about knowing how to hold your standards in real conversations with real donors, with real teams, real boards, without damaging relationships or second guessing or doubting yourself. And this can happen. And most of the time it doesn't happen because you don't realize what's going on. And you are working in isolation. You're working in a vacuum. And you're thinking, okay, I'm going to do this differently. And then it doesn't work differently. And you're like, man, I'm not good at this, or I don't know how to do this. And those things aren't true. You just don't have the right information and support to be able to actually create the transformation that you want. So if you're interested in talking with me about this, I'm happy to share with you what and listen to where you're struggling with agreements and boundaries, and talking about your current dynamics where you have pressure, overextension, misalignment, and we can map out how to shift those relationships into something clear, mutual, and that actually support your work and your mission. It's called the Donor Flow Call, and I always have a link in my bio in the show notes. I'm happy for you to book a call with me. If this really resonated with you, if you're listening to this thinking I could really use some help with boundaries and agreements, I can see where I'm giving my power away, we can change that for sure. If things, okay, here's again in the show notes, you can always connect with me, courageouscommunications.com/connect. If things feel more intense after you raise your standards, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. The extinction burst is not the final breakdown. It's the moment right before the breakthrough. So you can hang on through that burst. Change is coming. Change is there. It's not coming. Okay? So you can also maybe reflect on this, and I'm going to leave you with 2 reflection questions you can think about. One is, where in your work right now are you experiencing pushback after setting a boundary? And what would you change if you saw that moment not as resistance, but the pattern of trying to change? And I would also encourage you, where in the past have you experienced pushback when you were setting a boundary? And now you can look at that through a different lens, different understanding, and maybe depersonalize what happened. Again, if you're interested in learning more from me, or if you're looking for a speaker for an event who can share these types of really actionable, juicy content that can really help your team, your organization, I'm here for you. You can always connect with me to the link in the show notes, and I will see you next time, my sweet, on The Influential Nonprofit.